Today's modern roller coasters are a mix of steel, wood, and hybrid coasters. And on this week's episode of Coasternauts, we're taking a look at a ride of pure steel. Better known as Superman, the ultimate flight.
On Coasternauts, we want to take a closer look at what makes these rides appeal to so many. Old and young all view the experience through their own unique perspective. When we found out that some of the biggest roller coaster fans around are the scientists at Fermilab, we wanted to find out why these scientists love going from the lab to the track. For these guys, the thrill and sensation of roller coasters is a way for them to experience the physics they spend their lives researching. Superman Ultimate Flight is a flying roller coaster. You start out in a seated position, and that seat tilts you forward so you're belly down, so you can fly kind of like Superman. Leaving the station, you make a right-hand turn, or as I affectionately refer to it, the point of no return. That's because you're about to get carried by the chain lift, which takes the roller coaster up to the launch hill. At this point, you notice all you can see are your feet dangling and the ground below you. Gets even better than that, because at the very crest of the top of the hill, there's a short pause. The chain lift holds you there for a couple of feet. Just you and a 110-foot drop. But don't worry, because it lets go and you're off, turning down to the right again as we go down low to the ground and up into the pretzel loop. Now the downside of the pretzel loop gives us 0 Gs, the bottom of the pretzel loop gives us 4 Gs. Exiting the pretzel loop, there's a sweeping turn to the left, followed by another pass at the ground. Another sweeping turn, this time to the right, and then another pass at the ground. One more turn to the left. The pass at the ground this time is not quite so low, and the next turn is reversed to the right, which brings us into the barrel roll, or the corkscrew, and at the end, the final brake run.
Well, this morning we're here at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratories, home of the world-famous Tevatron particle accelerator. Basically, in layman terms, that's little particles going whee really fast at millions of miles an hour, colliding with each other and exploding.
We can basically use this to look back in time to just moments after the Big Bang and see what did the universe look like at that moment.
Now, they claim at Six Flags Great America that this ride will make us feel like we're actually flying, just like Superman, face down, arms out straight ahead. First of all, we're going to meet up with our thrill ride seekers and have a chat with them about what they can expect to experience from the ride tomorrow.
Well, the flying roller coaster suspends you underneath the track, and then a hinge rotates you 90 degrees, so your belly is actually facing the earth, and you're in a flying position.
Arms extended.
Arms extended.
Lying down. Surely this is a good thing. And then we're going to go and talk to our physicists and find out how they're going to measure all the things like gravity, G-pull, weightlessness. What are you looking forward to about the ride tomorrow?
Well, I'm a scientist. I like to take measurements.
Okay.
So I've got my iPhone here.
Yeah.
And it has an accelerometer chip in it.
A what?
Well, what it can do is it can measure the force that it feels, the acceleration in different directions.
Right.
And so, what I can do is run this program while I'm on the ride and figure out how many Gs am I feeling, what kind of force am I feeling.
I could only fly like Superman instead of taking those hot subways.
Today's roller coaster is an M&B built flying roller coaster called Superman Ultimate Flight. It's 115 feet tall with an initial launch drop of 100 feet. It has a maximum speed, according to the internet, of 51 miles an hour. That has a length of just a little bit over a half mile.
Because it only goes up 106 feet, that means when you're at the bottom of that hill, that drop, you're only 6 feet off the ground. And going that fast is going to seem like you're going to smash right into it. I'm kind of looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that. Based on the classic DC comic book superhero, this is the ride that says, is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's you. This ride lets you imagine that you're defying gravity.
It's going to be boring.
Boring.
Maybe boring.
But understanding gravity, that you need scientists. And luckily, we've got 4 experts right here.
Ben Kilminster, particle physicist at Fermilab.
Eric Previs, accelerator physicist at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory.
My name's Brittany Rutherford, and I'm an engineering physicist at Fermi National Accelerator Lab.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
So what is it that actually makes a roller coaster any good? Well, let's take the scientific terminology to help decipher exactly what everyone's talking about.
Gravity.
One of the forces that a plane feels is gravity, which is the same force that we all feel. And gravity comes from a couple things. It comes from the mass of the Earth that we're standing on, and also the distance we have to the Earth. So if I was on another planet, if I was on the moon, I would only weigh 25 pounds, and so my weight would be a fraction of a G. If I was actually really far away from the Earth, like an astronaut in space, I would feel 0 Gs. I'd feel weightlessness.
Lift.
Lift counteracts the force of gravity. In actual flight, in an actual airplane, the lift is provided by the difference in the air pressure between the bottom and the top of the wing. On this roller coaster, the lift is provided by the harness that holds the rider's body and by the structure of the roller coaster itself. I've always been interested in roller coasters, and this device will let us measure the acceleration on the body, and that's what causes the sensation of a roller coaster, the sensation of weightlessness or extra weight. And I'll be riding the roller coaster with this strapped to my chest, and then afterwards we'll be able to look at the data to see the forces that I experienced while I was on the ride.
I love you, Mum. I love you, Dad.
When you are in that belly down position, your weight is being supported by your rib cage and by the soft tissues of your belly.
Energy.
So people are usually scared of that really big first climb on roller coasters, but it's actually essential because that very first hill is going to give you all the energy that you need to carry you through the rest of the coaster. It starts out as this potential energy. Okay, they bring you up to the highest point of the coaster. That's the first hill. And then there's this whole energy conservation exchange between potential and kinetic. Potential being the energy associated with height, kinetic being the energy of motion. And that energy starts from the top of that hill and lasts you through the whole rest of the coaster. So as you can imagine, at the lower points of the coaster, you're going faster. At the higher points of the coaster, you're going slower. So a lot of that energy is dissipated between friction with the rails and other things. And so by the end of the ride, you've had just enough energy to get you back into where you started from.
Drag.
So when we're talking about the mechanics of flight, you've got your lift, and you've got your gravity, and you've got your forward thrust. We also experience this backward force called drag. You can think of it as like the air rushing through your face, or that force that's opposing your motion, the force that's kind of slowing you down as you try to go forward. And you think of it as being a bad thing, like you have to overcome that with the thrust of the airplane or flying craft, whatever it is. But it's actually necessary because the drag and the thrust work together to kind of balance out that plane and give it a smoother ride and a smoother landing.
What I really wanted for this ride was for it to really feel like I was flying. And we zoomed around one corner and there was a support post right there, and that was the best time of the ride for me.
Usually a flying roller coaster is going to be gentler and nicer to you than your average sit-down roller coaster, but that one back there felt like we got more G's than I've experienced the last few weeks in my other roller coaster trips.
All right, come on this way, quick. Okay, this is the out-of-bounds secret part of Fermilab, where only a few, chosen few, are allowed to go. This is the control room, and Brittany Rutherford is in here. Brittany.
Hey, Elliot.
How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm better now I've actually found you. So, I know you've been asked this question a million times before, and it's probably boring. What exactly do you do here at Fermilab?
I'm glad that you asked.
Thank you very much.
At Fermilab, we're interested in the interactions between subatomic particles. So we create these interactions by colliding protons and antiprotons at close to the speed of light. Now with all of that energy in those collisions, new particles tend to come out. And so we use our giant detectors to tell where these particles are going. This is one of the more interesting displays. This is called an event display.
Okay.
You can imagine that the center here is a cylinder where the protons are colliding with each other in the center.
Okay.
And then the detector is kind of an onion layer of different sorts of detectors, layer by layer detecting different sorts of particles. And if you're lucky, you'd like to see a track that connects to, oh there you go, that connects to a big energy,
Okay.
like that. If you unfurl this and lay it flat, it looks like this plot here.
So, how exactly does all this relate to roller coasters?
Just like us, they use electromagnetic sensors to tell when a piece of metal has flown by a track. They use photosensitive detectors that use light.
Right.
So really the monitoring systems are really very similar.
This ride was designed completely on computer. They use software that tells us how fast the ride's going to go. Each one of these trains has over 200 sensors on it for monitoring the position of the train, the position of the lap bars, the seat belts, the foot flaps to hold the guests tightly and securely in the ride.
Be back out that way.
Oh, wow. The particles collide in the center of the cylinder,
Yeah.
and you can kind of see these wires if you move your head back and forth.
Right.
In different layers. So we have magnets that steer these particles.
Okay.
We can keep accelerating them to higher and higher energies, and by the time these particles collide in this detector, they're moving basically the speed of light, and all that energy is turned into mass, which again, you don't want to collide roller coaster cars, but
No.
we collide these things together and we get, basically we create new matter. It's like E equals mc squared, and the matter comes flying out, and that's what we measure.
I'll be interested to see what our accelerometers say our maximum acceleration was on that.
When I saw how bulky this thing was, I was a little surprised they let me on the roller coaster with it.
Hey guys.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Everyone recovered from yesterday?
Yes.
Good.
Uploaded the data from the accelerometer I was wearing
Awesome.
and analyzed it here.
Okay.
You can see it's kind of interesting. That at this early point where we're going down the hill, feeling like we're flying, in fact, we were pretty close to 1G. In other words, we were feeling pretty normal. Then we rounded out the bottom here and hit this period where it drops very close to 0. That means we were feeling weightless, and that was when we were coming down this slope on this side.
The minimum weight that I felt was about 0.1 Gs, so pretty close to weightlessness.
Then as we rounded out the bottom, that was the intense weight where it goes all the way to about 3.5 Gs.
But how long do you feel that force for? The astronauts feel it for a few minutes. What I was able to find is that for about 2 seconds, I felt about a force of about 3 Gs.
We feel weightless again, where it goes down close to 0, and then we go through a series of corkscrews and then coast toward the end, and you see a little bump where we stop. And it's interesting that this matches the data that we saw from Ben's iPhone.
So from 0 to 3 Gs, how does that compare to some of the bigger and so-called better roller coasters that you've been on, John?
That 3.5 G mark is really intense. I brought 3 coasters to compare it with. We're going to start with Firehawk, which is a flying roller coaster at Kings Island, and it doesn't even get to 3 Gs. Firehawk is older than Superman. So this pretzel loop is an innovation that makes this a much more intense ride all the way around. Firehawk seems to have a few more peaks than Superman does, but they're much, much smaller in height. So as far as flying roller coasters goes, this is a good flying roller coaster. Patriot is an inverted roller coaster, still staying in the same family of roller coasters at Worlds of Fun, where you are still below the track. And it almost reaches 3.5 Gs. It has 4 inversions. The difference between these two graphs, near as I can tell, is the inverted coaster seems to be able to sustain Gs for longer than what the flying coaster could. And now we're going to go to our big daddy friend here. This is Vortex at Kings Island. This is a very traditional steel roller coaster, bolted down with an over-the-shoulder restraint, and they can pretty much do what they want with you on that ride because your contact with the ride is your back. He clips 4 Gs 4 times.
Wow.
So the flying coaster is shorter, but what I think is great, because they turn you on your back for the pretzel loop, you can get just as intense with this flying roller coaster, at least in moments, as you can with a traditional style roller coaster. And that's a pretty serious engineering achievement.
It certainly felt intense.
Okay, so we get from weightlessness a couple of times, you said, Eric, to 3.5 G pull. What's the duration, though? How long are we talking?
Yeah, about 5 seconds.
How comparable would that be to the accelerator you have here at Fermilab, for example, the protons, how fast they are traveling?
Well, that would be a little more exciting. If you look at the protons out in our Tevatron, they're going very close to the speed of light around a ring that's about 1 kilometer in radius. So if you calculate the acceleration they experience, that would be roughly a 1 in G's. That would be roughly a 1 followed by 13 zeros.
Okay, well, I still need to rethink this whole thing then, but it's probably a lot closer to the ride we're going to go on next week, guys.
On the Superman, my favorite part of the coaster was this inverted kind of 360 loop that they have, where on normal coasters, you'll go up and around, and on this coaster, you go down and around. So you really experience a different kind of force.
You really do feel like you're Superman flying there. So.
In your face.